Good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. How's everybody doing out there?
Good
Hey,
morning.
wonderful.
Happy
Happy
4th of
4th of
July.
July.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woo-hoo. Yeah. There we go. Go
Uh,
America. And in fact, that is a bit of a theme that I'll pick up on. But for those that are new to Voices of Health Point, this is our Saturday morning, what we call our walk and talk. It goes from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're welcome to join live. If you can get the Zoom link, which sometimes the host himself cannot get. So thank you to everyone that helped me out with the technical challenge this morning. For those that aren't able to join live, maybe in different time zones, you're welcome to catch the recorded episode that is on the YouTube channel called Voices of Health Point. But this is a time where us like-minded individuals, like-minded around the theme of Health Point, both clients and coaches, gather together once a week and we just have some fun. Sometimes we have some docket items, some things that we unpack in terms of a known topic, but a lot of times it's about just kind of dialoguing and seeing kind of what comes up throughout that time. So we typically go about an hour. Sometimes it is a little bit less than that, but we'll see how things go today. So with today, and I often have a docket item, I am going to, in keeping with the 4th of July theme for sure, I'm going to cover my docket item called A New Kind of Freedom, Reclaiming Health in the Spirit of 1776. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So in 1776, tyranny was visible. Redcoats on colonial streets, taxation without representation, oppression enforced by law and musket. The threat was clear, the enemy named, and the lines were drawn. It was both a physical fight and a philosophical one, a revolution born not just of war, but of conviction. It gave rise to a constitution built on the radical idea that human beings are meant to be free. But here in 2025, a different tyranny has taken hold, quieter, slower, and more insidious. It doesn't march in formation or impose tea taxes. It sneaks into our pantries, our screens, our habits, our hospitals. It poisons not with gunpowder, but with ultra processed food, engineered addiction, and false narratives about what health really is. And like the proverbial frog slowly boiling, many Americans don't realize they're being conquered until it's too late. This is the tyranny of metabolic dysfunction. And make no mistake, the threat is real. More than 6 out of 10 American adults now live with at least one chronic condition. Nearly 9 in 10 are metabolically unhealthy. Our children, once symbols of boundless energy, are now being diagnosed with adult diseases like type 2 diabetes and fatty liver before they can even vote. What could be more defenseless than a nation that is mentally foggy, physically exhausted, emotionally unstable, and dependent on pharmaceutical management for basic function? A population too tired to rise is a population easy to control. In 1776, we fought with muskets, ink, and ideas. Today, we must fight with knowledge, choice, and courage. We must wake up ourselves, our families, and our fellow citizens. We must teach our children the truth that our health is being stolen one bite, one screen glow, one sleepless night at a time. And we must call out the systems that profit from our decline. Here's what most people don't know. The average American consumes over 60% of their calories from ultra-processed foods. These aren't just empty calories, they are metabolic sabotage. They spike blood sugar violently, leading to insulin surges. Over time, this dulls the body's ability to respond to insulin at all, creating insulin resistance, a silent driver of weight gain, inflammation, fatigue, brain fog, and chronic disease. Leptin, the hormone that says you're full, gets ignored. Ghrelin, the hunger signal, keeps shouting. The result? Always hungry, always tired, never satisfied. Insulin isn't just about blood sugar. It governs fat storage, inflammation, hormone balance, and even brain function. And when insulin signaling breaks down, everything breaks down, even the brain. Alzheimer's is now being called type 3 diabetes by leading researchers. This is the tyranny of the 21st century, hiding in plain sight. But there's hope. And unlike 1776, this battle doesn't require years of bloodshed. It requires waking up. It requires reclaiming an agency. And for many, it only takes 1 week of focused, intentional care, 1 week of fueling the body properly, sleeping deeply, moving naturally, stabilizing blood sugar for the fog to begin to lift. Within days, people begin to feel the first surge of real energy, energy they forgot was possible. And that energy becomes strength, and that strength becomes momentum. HealthPoint is one example of a battle-tested system that helps people do just that. In as little as 6 weeks, the changes can be profound, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. It's not a diet, it's a declaration. So this Independence Day, let us honor 1776 by rising up again, this time not against a foreign empire, but against the modern forces that profit from our decline. Declare war on the systems that keep us weak, sick, and dependent. Reclaim your health, reclaim your clarity, reclaim your strength. Choose metabolic freedom, because energy is the new freedom. And when that energy returns, do not keep it to yourself. Let it be your call to arms. Rally your family, wake up your friends, let your transformation provoke the questions, and let your answers be bold. We need an ever-growing, ever-strengthening, battle-tested army of the awake and the well, because the tyranny is real and the fight is now. Woo, I love that. Nothing like a good revisit of 1776 and our founding fathers to just kind of I don't know how you guys feel, but just to kind of I feel like breaking out the trumpet and doing the just I don't know, just getting excited.
I feel like getting my musket and blowing up the pantry or something. Yeah, that felt like a pep talk from Bo Schembechler or something.
Yeah.
That was good. I like that.
Felt good. Yeah.
In fact, I think it's more like grabbing a tomato out of a fresh farm that's actually got vitamins in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not throwing it.
Right. So yeah, it's interesting, as I was kind of unpacking this and putting this together. I don't know how many. I'm curious. Has anybody ever read the book called 1776? I believe the author, that's one of the David McCulloch books. And
No,
if you
I
have,
have not. I think I read John Adam, but I don't think I read that.
ooh, that's
That took
another
forever.
one. Yeah, well, most David McCulloch is it? Yeah, I think it's him. That is, yeah. You're not getting a book and anything other than 2 inches thick. When you're
Oh, yeah.
when you're choosing that author. But yeah, he does these deep, sometimes biographies. Sometimes it's a deep historical narrative. But 1776 was yeah, if anybody gets if you're a fan of early American history, a fan of the theme in general, of the independence of this nation, and it's also kind of an interesting book. It doesn't, you turn that final page and it's not like most books that ends with a punctuation or a clear ending. It just kind of drifts off. It doesn't, and in a way, you're kind of startled by that. I'm sorry, a bit of a spoiler alert on that, but in a way, I think it was intentional. My guess is it was intentional by the author to say this is something that continues. this is a story. This is a book called 1776, going through the incredible history of the main theme of that era and that story. But this is not a chapter that ever ends. This is something that my interpretation is it will be questioned, it will be threatened, it will be challenged. And so in that theme, as I see, America, call it over the past, 30 years, and what's happened with, some of these statistics in terms of the amount of chronic disease that is now present in the American population versus acute. It's a real interesting, there's a sharp contrast in the statistics actually around 1960, in the 60s, where medicine switched to more chronic and management of chronic versus prior to that, it really kind of didn't exist. It was more acute. But yeah, it's a book. It's a fascinating book, a real page turner, very surprising. I mean, if you read that, a theme that I came away with too is like, it truly is a miracle that we're here. I mean, it looked so bleak during years and years and years of that battle. And, to look at it from the outside, you would just say, this is done. This is over. This is never going to happen. And then just a few, call it a twist of fate, call it, providence. But there was just a few thin threads that, jerk things another way, and boom, next thing we know, we've got the, a new nation and a declaration of independence. And in many ways, I think that metaphor is also the same, where many of us, some of us have come into particularly the health point, kind of through existing business and business connections and so forth, but many other, it is that thin thread of opportunity. If it wasn't for one turn of phrase, one conversation, I think of Carol and Eileen. I know Carol's not on this morning, and I don't know if Bruce and Eileen are as well, but that was a providential connection in a whether they shopping in a clothing store or something like that, and they bumped into each other, and then Carol gave her number. But the point is that so many of the connections to a total transformation in health and energy, certainly in the case of Eileen and Bruce, they're combined down over 100 pounds. She's her doctor is hugging her because of the pause of her fatty liver. Many of her meds have either been dialed down or they have taken her off the meds. She's got new energy. So again, like that slight thin thread of opportunity that we found ourselves in as a nation in those mid 1700s to probably hundreds or thousands of individuals that have gotten that thin thread of connection to a health point coach or somebody that could help them get their energy back, get their life back. I just think the metaphors and the comparisons are strong. So, all right.
Eric, I thought you talked about 1776. I got out a bunch of my books the other day. I got a part on my shelves that have to do with patriotic 4th of July, because the grandkids were coming over. Anyway, and I ran across this book, which kind of reminds me of what you were just talking about. And it was called, oh gosh, I read it a long time ago, If You Can Keep It. And it's about American liberty. And Eric, I think it's Metaxas or META, something like that. Anyway, excellent book, not very big, but I looked at it, I translated it into Health Point, because there's this title, If You Can Keep It. Okay, because we talk about people losing weight. and not being able to keep it off, and I thought, well, that's a good thing to keep in mind, that's why we have the lifetime maintenance, that kind of thing, that, it's not just about keeping your liberty, it's about keeping the things you've worked hard for, including weight loss or whatever else, or better health. So anyway, I thought of that as you were talking about the 1776 book.
Yeah, I
So
actually looked it up real quick here. Beautiful cover to it, by the way, with the flag waving in the blue background. And it's called If You Can Keep It, and you're correct. It's Eric, tough last name, Metaxas,
yeah,
Metaxas. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think
And
somebody mentioned that at a weekend years ago, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just thinking that can't remember where I got it, but I think I'm going to read it again. But anyway.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Eric,
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Jerry, and
Yeah.
I appreciate the things that that you said about 1776, and I've been recently reading Caroline Leaf's book, Switch on Your Brain, and I think the battle is not just in health, as you know, but it's a battle of the mind as well. And we allow ourselves to think and act in a way that we need to think about changing those things. And I think the switch on your brain, and then I noticed in this month's recommended book by Network 21, it's another book by Caroline Leaf, and I just ordered that, and I can't think of the title of it, but I think the things you're saying about health is equally true about just our thinking. And, I may do a docket item on that at some point on Saturday morning. But I just wanted to mention that.
I love that, Jerry. And yes, Carolyn Leaf, I was looking real quick to see if I could find the title of that, as you say, that recommended book that came through Network 21. But Carolyn Leaf, one of her previous books I'm seeing here, and many of us have probably read it, and you're referencing this, Jerry, Switch on Your Brain. Is that, but that's not her most recent one. Oh, I think I see it. Well, anyhow.
Yeah, it's think, act, or something, but it's going into action. And that's the one that Network 21 just recommended. But Switch on Your Brain has certainly a lot of applicable material about how we think and what we could accomplish if we thought different.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And is she the one, am I thinking of the right author, that digs into a fair amount of the science behind it from an epigenetic standpoint, where, like, quite literally, there's your thoughts?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. She's a physician, and she goes into it, everything scientifically, scripturally, and just how, all of those things she covers in a great way on Switch on Your Brain. And I'm sure she does much the same thing in this book that I've ordered.
Hey guys, I found it. It's Think, Learn, Succeed.
There you go.
Understanding and using your mind to thrive at school, the workplace, and life. I was able to search for the email while you guys were talking.
All right. Well, I believe that's going to be a great book for all of us to think about.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as we all know, it's so much of the element of this health journey is how we think, right? Arguably, I don't know if I want to say it's the biggest part, but and that, we can say that, and then, but then how do you shape that? How do you change the way you think? Well, one is when recommended books come through, like this one, Jerry, that you're mentioning from Carolyn Leaf, and you can read something. Reading books changes your mindset over time. Of course, our global app, as we call it, the 89 audios. Oh my gosh, is that just, we've been hoping and praying for such a thing for quite some time in HealthPoint, you know, to have something. And now we have something in abundance. You know, we've come from copying and pasting independent links and shooting them over to people, which works as well. But now at scale, for somebody to be able to onboard into the system and start on their HealthPoint journey and get those daily messages and have as much as essentially 3 months worth on a day-by-day basis. That changes the way we think, right? Changing the way you think is not just a catchphrase. It's an actual, I call it a discipline. It takes reading these books, like Jerry is mentioning about, or listening to the audios that are available. And then even if you know that, then it's like, okay, well, what books and what audios? And again, in HealthPoint, for somebody that's looking to transform and and get healthier, you know, we've got those. They don't have to guess at it. Love that. No, I love that, Jerry. And, you know, so grateful to, you know, Network 21, which again, for those that are new to Voices of HealthPoint or HealthPoint in general, we're so fortunate that Network 21, based out of Atlanta, Georgia, they own, you know, essentially what you would call the IP, the intellectual property of the HealthPoint system. And they are absolute experts at, you know, curating content and putting it into a usable format. We're talking about apps, we're talking about audios, where this is in not just the United States, this is in many countries around the world. And so that is a big part of any kind of journey of health, of wealth and financial is, you know, do you have access to information from, you know, world-class, best of class teachers, and more importantly, you know, people that not only can teach but have walked the talk. You know, they've done what they're being recorded on a Network 21 stage somewhere. These are all people that are in the hunt and have been there and done that, and sometimes are, you know, super active as they're doing this. And so grateful to Network 21. That stuff doesn't happen easily. It doesn't happen by accident. It's very intentional what they're doing, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of resources. And I'm sure glad we don't have to do that.
Well, I want to
We
say
can
a
just,
thank you to Kathy for that book. We've talked about it before, the How to Conquer Your Negative Thoughts. You know,
yeah.
that book is great, and it's so small
Oh yeah.
that lots of people, when I first read it, I've read it about 6 times. My husband laughed because I'm highlighting things, and he said, if I keep doing that, the whole book will be highlighted pretty soon. But I'm breathing a little hard here. I'm walking to the fruit market, and I had a big hill. I thought I could talk before I got to the hill, but I didn't. So anyway, but I would thank you, Kathy, for that book. I bought, I think, 10 or 12 copies off of Amazon, because when I read it, I go, I'm going to know people that need this. And I've probably given 6 of them away. I just gave one the other day to somebody. I was at therapy for my hands, and she was talking. I said, you need this book. She said, I'll just buy it right now. So anyway, I think it's a great little book. It's like, what, $6 or $7. And it's a good book. And if somebody hasn't read it, it applies to everybody. So anyway, thanks, Kath.
No problem. Like I said, you know, that day in the hospital, I was kind of dealing with the negative Nellies a bit, and just had to get away from both of their rooms because they both were sleeping, and I still needed steps. And luckily just walked by the gift shop, and literally it just jumped out at me.
Well,
And
that's
then
like
when
Eric says, the thin
you know,
threads.
exactly. Then when I walked up to it, and then I picked it up and I read it, And then I recognized the doctor's name from Eric saying he had went to that conference, and I was like, oh, I need this, you know. And yeah, I had no idea how much it was going to change my life. And yeah, I've told several people about it as well too. So I'm glad it, you know, I'm glad it was brought into my life, so that way I can share it with everybody else's, because you're right, it works for anybody in any situation. It doesn't matter what it is, you know. So
And
yeah.
what's the name of that book again?
Oh, Conquer Your Negative Thought. Let me look. I got it in the office.
Conquer Your Negative Thoughts, I think
yeah,
it is.
Yeah, it was the one, Jerry, a couple months ago, Network 21 recommended it. Yeah, it's by Daniel G. Ammon, Conquer Your Negative Thoughts.
Oh, yes.
It's like a teal, little teal book. It's like a small little paperback, really. The Secret to Emotional Freedom and Happiness.
Right.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. It, like I said, that and Atomic Habits have totally changed my life forever in the best ways possible.
Yeah, two great books there, Kathy. Atomic Habits and Conquer Your Negative Thoughts. Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Daniel Amen. Yep. It's and then yeah, I'm looking at it too, and you're right, Laurel. Yeah, like $6. So
it was 10 in the hospital gift shop, but who cared?
Yeah. And just, you know, that one book that you had the presence of mind, the presence of spirit, Kathy, to, you know, in your moment, that's what caught your eye, what impacted you. You stopped, you took action, it changed your life. And then look at all of us talking about it. I'm, you know, we may not have been familiar with it at all had it not been for you. And that's that ripple effect, that butterfly effect, as Ray Keller in one of our daily messages, or one of our daily audios, the butterfly effect. Wonderful.
And I guess it just reinforces the power of our amazing larger Network 21 community for all of us who are blessed to be a part of Network 21 on a larger scale, and more intimately, our Health Point community.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody sharing everything for the benefit of everybody. One big team, one big family, like we are.
I'm curious too, did that book come through from Network 21 due to you recommending it or bringing it to their awareness?
I have no idea. I wondered. I didn't know if Carol had maybe said something, because remember, we did kind of talk about it, and I was suggesting that it might be a great book for people to read prior to starting Health Point when we were getting ready to do our first cohort back in January. So I don't know if Carol said something to somebody, or if it just ended up just being happenstance that somebody found it and said, hey, this is great. I really don't know. I was like really tickled pink when I saw it, though. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, I bet you it was. I bet you it was something that, you know, through your conversations with Carol, and Carol, you know, in conversation probably with Casey at Network 21, and boom, here we are. And now it's, you know, who knows the you know, untold number of people that have now had the benefits of reading that book. And yeah, such a short, condensed, just punchy, clear book. That one is Conquer Your Negative Thoughts. Yeah. And Dr. Daniel Amen, the author of that, like you said, Kathy, I was familiar with him. He's one of the pioneers in what's called SPECT scans, which the hardest part about a SPECT scan is knowing what it stands for, or better yet, pronouncing it. It's a single photon emission computerized tomography, I think. Okay, say that one 7 times fast. But in the certification that I got through his clinics, they offer that. And what that is, and a little bit of a background to give context to this book and the power of this book. You know, Dr. Daniel Amen is, you know, he's a real, first of all, he's been a practicing psychiatrist for decades, but he was a pioneer in SPECT technology. And what that is an ability to measure I won't get into the details of it, but basically you can, you'll see like a 3D rendering image of your brain. And when you get a SPECT scan, which I have done, and Emily, my wife, and I have done, I did it as part of my certification, went to Chicago to one of their 6 clinics, and it's kind of like an MRI. You're laying on a table, you get a contrast dye solution, put into your brain. It's really interesting. And then they literally do that process of introducing that dye into your bloodstream while you are doing these high intensity, kind of think of it like a computer game. You're sitting at a computer, but basically what you're doing is you're trying to exercise your brain by doing these quiz questions and different flashing things on the screen, and you're just engrossed in that, trying to do the best you can. And literally an assistant comes into the room while you're doing that, and you're trying to still peck away at this keyboard while they are doing a needle in your arm. I no other way to say that. And you just keep playing, and so then this tracer element, then when you lay on like an MRI type table that just kind of goes over around your head, it will map out where the blood flow is and is not. And that's what's called SPECT imaging. It's similar to like a PET scan, but kind of that same type of a thing, PET scan and a PET scan in cancer. But he was first to say, look, even as a practicing psychiatrist, I will tell you that many times the course of action with somebody that is suffering cognitively, emotionally, and mentally is to look at the brain as an organ that could be damaged. And that may, be valuable to, sit the patient down on a couch and have counseling sessions with them. That can absolutely be, he doesn't discredit that at all. Of course, he's a practicing psychiatrist, but sometimes it's like literally the brain has been damaged. It could be through TBI. It could be something with mold. It could be something from a stress. He was the big one. For those that aren't familiar with him, I've never heard his name, but maybe if you're a fan of sports, of the NFL, the National Football League, there was a era not too long ago where there was a recognition of the rise of depression and suicide amongst NFL players, and some often retired NFL players. And there was a lot of wrangling back and forth with the NFL and the players union and so forth. And he was called in, in that process, kind of as scientific, testimony. And he tested a number of NFL players, and in fact was able to show that this condition, this mental health challenge that they were having, was because of the damage to their brain, the damage, the concussive damage, and so forth, particularly around the temporal lobes. And so he kind of rose to the awareness of a lot of people, around the world as a result of that. But here's the thing: if you have all these scans and if you do all of these things, what do you do then? That's the important thing. And that's where this book can be very, very helpful. And also, if you look at what he recommends in terms of dietary choices, in terms of helping with conditions of the brain, of an unhealthy brain, to work to help to get your brain healthier, he talks very much about macronutrient profiles that are very much in line with what we do in HealthPoint, and micronutrient recommendations. In fact, any guesses as to one of the leading supplements that is recommended for improving the health of your brain? Any guesses?
Omega-3s?
Omega-3s. You got it. You got it. Yep. Ding, ding. So it's so yeah, so it's a really, really great book for sure, and a really, really great individual that's doing a lot of good in the world. For
And
sure.
there's some simple things in there too, Eric. I know for one thing, my brother, I talked to him in Texas, and he mentioned he's a real high IQ guy, and he happened to mention he's just been sitting around, couldn't get out of the chair, and he was and he used the word depressed, which never comes out of my brother's mouth. So I had just read that book. I wasn't even probably a third of the way through it. And I remember the little tip that was in there about if you just can't get up, you don't have the energy to do anything, just stand up, and how it changes the synapses and stuff. Just stand up, and you may decide to sit back down, but just stand up. So I told him that. And later that night, he called me and said, what, what, what book was that? Send it to me. And I said, I already sent it to you. You'll have it on your porch tomorrow morning. And he said it made a big difference for him. So anyway, it's just some simple things in there too. It's not even, yes, it's scientific. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but it's also for the beginning reader of stuff like that. Something simple, like just stand up. I thought was good.
Love that. Love that. Those so often those simple things, what we love about them is they're actionable, right? You could, because you were aware of it, Laurel, to be able to recommend that to your brother, I think you said, is, that's something where it's not, stand on your head and at the same time, rub your belly and pat your head. It's just stand up, stand up.
And I had just probably read that maybe a half hour before I talked to him. Another thin thread, you know how that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it was in his book that he unpacked that standing up part, but is definitely in the certification course that I took through him, where he was talking about this very thing that you're talking about, Laurel, about it, how, you literally have to kind of start rewiring your brain. Your brain has suffered some damage, maybe some things that have caused some depression. And, there's a number of things that can be done to help with that, with the rewiring, the refiring of certain neurons. And on the topic of movement, he used the example in one of his seminars of, if you're wondering, he then went beyond just standing up. He's talking about walking, which again is a big part of Health Point, right? And then he said, and here's how I want you to ultimately get to with your walking in terms of helping your mental health. And it was fun when he used this example, because most of us can relate to it. He says, you know how you walk when you're late for a flight? He said, walk like that. When you're walking through the airport and you're tight on your boarding, they're calling your boarding overhead, flight 636, gate 4, now final boarding or whatever, and you're kind of have that pace. You're not doing a little stroll. And Carol would call that a power walk. But he says, walk like you're late to your gate for catching a flight. That's how you ultimately want to start walking. And again, he's a great teacher, and that was a great message there. But that's great stuff. And I'll be transparent here. I think I've been transparent on this. I know a lot of us have on in terms of our own health journey, and and that is that some of these things you may be like Laurel, you're talking about, like your brother, where he just was feeling something that you never thought you would see in him, and he maybe had never felt. But there are seasons in life. There are things that can happen in life that are outside things that are happening to us. And I don't know what it is with your brother or what could have led to that. What's important is that you're providing resources and books to help them with that. But in my case, I've always been, I've never had any challenge with kind of a deep, gloomy type of gray mental health or depression or anything of that nature. It's kind of always the Tigger, not the Eeyore. Kind of the high energy and just figuring things out and getting things done and enjoying the process. But life happens, and sometimes it's these other stressors. Sometimes, like I mentioned with Dr. Daniel Amen, if you're an athlete and you've just taken hits to the brain, hits to the skull, you could be a Tigger and high energy all your life, and you get enough impact. Or if you're a soldier and there's IEDs or explosives, or those, maybe the emotional trauma, just a month after month after month of that emotional trauma in a wartime setting can alter the physiology of your brain. In my case, it was, I was blessed to be heavily involved in the care for my mother for a number of years. And the entire time, and it was, call it about a 3-year run, never felt anything. It was just, you just get done what needs to get done. We had great consensus, amongst our family, but I was there having to make a lot of the difficult decisions because actually just, through a variety of things, I had power of attorney. So if it was a hospital stay and I'm sleeping at the hospital and I get woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning by the doctor, it's, you clear your head and they're asking you to make decisions, tough decisions, and decisions that you may or may not be able to reach out to the rest of the family at that time to get input and consensus and stuff. And you've got to make a decision, and you're, of course, trying to make the best decision that you can. But over time, what happened with me is one day, like your brother, and it was shortly after my mother had passed away, where I just I literally could not bring myself to move. And it was a very difficult situation. And I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. Fortunately, with time and things like we're talking about here, like standing up, like walking like you're late to catch a plane, and time. I wish it would have happened overnight, because it was not a fun place to be, but it took time. It took many weeks, months, but you did kind of like almost like a physical therapy where you feel it starting to get better, and then you have a hope, and then you lean into what you're doing and you get stronger, and you get more hopeful, and that hopefulness builds and builds and builds. And fortunately, in my case, I was able to not only get back, but I then did visit with a professional on this, and because it was tough during that time to get access to any kind of professional. I didn't even know where to turn or what to do, but I knew it was tough to get, any kind of professional help, because this was like around COVID, and it was very, very tough to get access to resources and people because they were swamped. But since then, I have, and fortunately, when I asked about this and just, is this something that can reoccur? And of course it can, they said, but just the sheer fact that you've kind of almost like welding metal is kind of the metaphor that they use, like where sometimes the weld over the broken piece is stronger than the metal itself. And, that you'll recognize these signs if they ever start popping up. Whereas the first time they kind of caught you by surprise. And secondly, you've built more of a support and awareness amongst people around you, and some of the physical and nutritional ways of managing it. So I just thought I'd be transparent on that. You mentioned about your brother Laurel, and the point there is that we all, you might be listening to this and saying, hey, I'm fine. I don't, what's all this stuff about, this is meaningless to me. Great. And hopefully you continue on that trajectory. But life is life, and things happen, and particularly if things of high emotion, like a loved one, and a high emotion, high duration, can have high impact, and it can break you. It can break you down hard, and it's nice to have resources and awareness with that. So I'm hopeful for your brother Laurel, and you certainly provided one resource, one step in that direction for sure.
Well, and I was glad to be able to do it. Like you said, I think for a lot of people, as it was, I think for my brother, he's 83. He probably chops a cord of wood every couple of weeks. I mean, he's like active, he's got property. And what started, I think, was just a simple injury. His knee started bothering him. I said, "You're 83, give yourself a break." But I do think that it accumulates. He's a sharpshooter. He's a patriot. He's frustrated with the world. I mean, there's a lot of little things. And he just, and I do think I just talked to him the other day and he sounded great. So, again, thanks to Kathy, I guess I look at that. So, but yeah, I think that's a book that can help anybody or a lot of the resources we have. So that's it. I'll be quiet now.
No, I love it. Please don't be quiet. Anybody on here, please speak up. That's really great. You mentioned something there, and I'll just, it's always fun sometimes the direction that these voices of health point take. But there was Ben Physick. Many of us know who Ben Physick is, a legendary figure in the Health Point program, and he in Australia. I was watching, this is some time ago, where he was doing a lot of selfie videos, kind of his own solo walk and talks and giving a message. And I'm not sure when this was, it doesn't really matter, but he really keyed in on the mental health. And you mentioned something there, Laurel, about how, he said something clear to you that made you think, okay, maybe to give him some help, some resources. But what Ben Physick was talking about, and I'd have to look it up, it's not so important to know the manner of doing what he's suggesting, but rather the intent behind it. And that is, we're like, hey, how's your day going? Amongst friends, or family. Hey, how you doing? Oh, great, great. And what Ben was talking about is really listening. They may be great, but for anybody that's been in a mental, emotional state that was scary, you can whip it up a lot of times and answer great, but sometimes it's not so great. And what Ben was talking about is kind of a follow-on question, and sometimes more than a follow-on question. Now, of course, you don't want to, take somebody that you see every day, and when you say, hey, how's your day going? They say, great. You're like, keep digging to peel that onion layer back further and further on every time, every day. But I know with myself, that was one of the biggest changes, is that I now looked, and I'll continue to work at it to get better and better, to look around to people around me and realize and be aware and in a position to maybe ask that question to find out, are they really great? Are they really okay? Are they like all of us can learn to do? They just kind of summon the energy to be able to say, yeah, great, how you doing? And then to really listen. Because a lot of times when people are in a position, fortunately with your brother, Laurel, it sounds like he was clear and told you what he was feeling. And again, you're aware of him and in terms of his lifestyle and maybe his frustrations with some things. There's a lot of, news and media out there where I'll say definitely the dosage makes the poison. Things in small amounts, maybe not too harmful, things, chronically running in the background or 24/7. And, I don't think you can be mentally, emotionally strong enough to endure through some of the, megaphones of the media out there. So definitely taking it in
Not to
small doses.
belabor the point, but I think you brought up something else good for everyone is that, my background is in counseling kids. And so they never tell you the truth the first time out of the box anyway. But when my brother was talking about his injuries, my knee hurts, my shoulder hurts, and and I just said what was something I say a lot is, well, and he said, but otherwise I'm doing pretty good. I said, okay, great. Other than that, how are you really doing? And that's when he said, well, depressed. that's when it came out. So I used to do that a lot with kids. Somebody says, "Hi, how are you today?" "I'm good." "Okay, other than that, how are you doing?" Because it's a reflex to say, "I'm good, I'm fine." You don't want to burden people with stuff. But if given the opportunity to answer that question again, or in a little bit different way, I think, just saying, "Great, I'm glad you're feeling good. Other than that, how's it going?" Something like that sometimes gives people a chance, because they know if they're not great. So anyway, that when you said that, I thought, yeah, my brother didn't tell me off the top of it. He just complained about his injuries. So anyway, all right,
Right.
that's it.
That's great. That's great. And again, coming from yourself with your counseling background, I love that. Kids never tell you how they're doing, at least not at first. But a skilled counselor, a skilled individual like yourself knows to say something like, "Oh, great, great. Other than that, how are you doing?" And to give them that space. And so often, if they are hurting or something else, it probably just takes that, right, Laurel? Probably just one more question, maybe with your brother, just one more question, and then they'll really open up a little bit more.
Right. I think that's true. And I think that they, and if they don't, that's fine too. But if it's right on the cusp of what they were going to say anyway, but didn't want to burden you, it just gives them another chance. So,
Yep.
and if they say, "No, everything's great," I said, "Oh, good, double great. All right." So, well, I'm going to mute myself because now I'm at the fruit market, and that's what I'm looking at. So,
Okay.
I don't want all the background noise. So
That's all right.
All
I think
righty.
we're thanks again, Laurel. And I think we're all about ready to mute ourselves. It is Saturday, the day after the 4th. It's the 5th of July right now. And I think a lot of us probably have some plans for today. So we're about at the hour mark. So fun. What a fun direction that these Voices of Health Point often take. And so unless there's anything else kind of punchy that anybody else wants to say, I think we'll get ready to wrap up here and kind of set the tone for things for next week, which will be, I guess, the 12th of July. So yeah, so I think that's it for this episode of Voices of Health Point. Guys, everyone, Jerry, Laurel, Kathy, David, everyone, if I'm missing a name, everyone that is contributed to this. This is what it's all about. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today. A happy 4th of July to everyone. And we'll see everyone next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks again, Eric.
Bye-bye.